into this session, and we're gonna move into almost more of this is a podcast, a presentation, a mini lecture series. In trying to record these 12 videos that can help anyone beginning their journey in project management, I have found that trying to contain it to a 10-minute long session is just meaning that there's a lot left on the table. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to record a long form, and I may dissect this into short form. So I'm not sure which one of these you would be looking at, but if you're looking at the short form, the long form exists, and if you're looking at the long form, then the short form exists. So today we're looking at a project management concept, which is called WBS, work breakdown structure. And one of the last sessions we did had to do with the triple constraint, which is a project management concept created by the Project Management Institute that speaks about cost, scope, and time being the three sort of cornerstones of a three-legged stool that manages and creates a framework for project. The WBS is going to take scope and scope definition and get into some detailing of that. So WBS is work breakdown structure, and it represents a sort of roadmap for defining scope. It really is at its core a hierarchical decomposition of project into manageable sections. It helps with organizing tasks and assigning responsibilities, as well as tracking progress across the entire project, regardless of the area. Why do we need to use a WBS? It improves project planning and scheduling. I have been a part of several projects, and I have seen where the closest thing to a WBS is an attempt to create a schedule. And the schedule, oftentimes, when you start with the schedule, you are prone to miss some of the fundamental concepts that can help. WBS enhances communication among stakeholders, and it facilitates task assignments and tracking. So because you're going from the top down, you will end up going as deep as you need to, and that can become the basis for your doing task assignments. It supports cost estimating and supports project control and all of that. It clarifies project scope and deliverables, and this is probably the most powerful part of why we should do a WBS. Project scope gaps and scope creeps are significant challenges that we have with projects. Scope gap is when you have something that is needed to be done to achieve the goal, but it wasn't recognized and it wasn't assigned. Or if you're parceling things out to different contractors, nobody picked this up, or this company thought this one was doing it and this one thought this one was doing it. So scope gap becomes a significant part of that. It helps to control what we call scope creep, where while we're doing this, you will get a notification saying, hey, why don't we just do this? And suddenly you're creating the Taj Mahal when you were contracted to build a tent, because you're taking incremental steps. If you have it well defined in a work breakdown structure that is agreed on by everybody, it helps to control both scope gap and scope creep. So how do you ensure that your scope is defined completely to reduce scope gap? And why does a WBS matter? Let's look at some of the foundations of success or failure if you have or don't have it. 52% of projects lack a defined scope, and that's according to the Project Management Institute in 2024. 190% cost overrun happened on the Boston Big Dig, which was a project that did not have a defined WBS, and it just ended up cascading into almost twice the cost. You are 3 times more likely to meet your objectives if you have clearly defined structure and scope. These are statistics, data that you should trust and therefore learn and create a WBS for every project that you're a part of. The work breakdown structure starts with the project goal. It goes in the next level. It looks at the major deliverables. It looks at work packages as the broken down, decomposed major deliverables into work packages. And from work packages, you go down and you get into activities. The key principles that we should bear in mind when we talk about WBS, the most fundamental one is the 100% rule. All project scope must be included. And there's a note here that says nothing extra. And I want to mention you want to ensure that you have everything defined and you don't go off into tangents. But one of the tangents that may be useful to include, and it may not be, the WBS may not be the home for it, but a synonymous document, or as a matter of fact, the WBS can become a part of it, where you will define what is not included. And this is especially important if it is natural, normal, reasonable to think that if you're doing A, then you are going to be doing B. If the case is that you're not doing B and you're doing A, we want to define that scope does not include B. It does not include removal of the material from the demolition. If you're bringing a team to demolish a building, but you want to control the refuge and manage that because you have a recycling plan and a recycling plant and all of that, then it should be included in that to say it does not include removal of debris. Because it is a natural assumption that it does include that. So therefore you may get a vendor pricing to include that. And the flip side of that is also the same. You may get somebody who gets a scope and it doesn't clearly say that it includes removal of material and byproducts generated when it should. So you want to make sure that you are having 100%, and if there are clear exclusions, you are mentioning those. And let's make sure our WBSs are, is that a word, WBSs, are deliverable based. It's focused on outcome and not focused necessarily on activities. It's going to always be a hierarchical level. You're going to go project, major deliverables, down to work packages. Now, if we were to look at how to build a simple WBS, you could start like these guys are doing here with post-it notes, and you're writing these and moving them around, grouping them, making sure nothing is excluded. By defining your final deliverable, identifying major components, which is your level 2, and then decomposing into work packages. And obviously you want to utilize your team to get input. Right? Now let's look at some examples, and while we're doing that, I want to look at a couple specific tools that can help with WBS. Now, this is a construction project WBS, and this particular tool, I'm using Smartsheet, but there are other spreadsheet-based tools that can be used to mimic what this does. So here we have, if we're doing a construction project, the deliverables that we have are project management and design and engineering, site preparation, foundation, structure. And let me just stop for a moment here and say, if we think of construction project, if we think of entertainment-based project, if we think of IT-based project, healthcare project, whatever the projects are, a major cornerstone of that should always be project management, because managing the project is a part of what will make it happen, and you can't plan that outside of the project. So project management, while it's not tangible, should always be a part of your WBS. So in this particular tool, if we're gonna do project management, I'm gonna just show you a little bit of the mechanics of how the tool works. Project management, initiate, plan, control, and execute. Let's say we have those 4 cornerstones for the project management deliverable. These here, the mechanics of this tool means you want to select these, and you're going to use the indent tool to make these become children of this. So you can use this minus sign to collapse, and you just have the family head, and then you expand it to have this, and you can break these down into other levels. So it allows you to do multiple levels, and then you can do multiple sub levels. So you could indent these here, and then you could indent 4 under 3 and 6 under 5. So you could just brainstorm, and if you're like, this really belongs under sub 1, you can literally drag it there and then indent it using the indent tool. So the mechanics of creating these hierarchical structure, and if we were to look at this one here, where we have the project management as the level 1, and it has 3 components: initiation, planning, control, and monitoring, and closeout. So over here you see where I have used this table to just list my level 1s as many times as I have breakdowns. So these are my level 2s, and each level 2, initiating and planning, monitoring and control, closeout, they each have 3 unique level 3 activities. So from this, you can use this tool to select what you have here, and you go to insert, and you're going to insert a chart, and then you are going to change the chart type to organizational chart, and it shows you initiation and planning, and it shows you what's underneath that, right? So the mechanics of creating this with project management and the 3, and then initiating and the breakdown, and having this hierarchical thing that you can look at as you would if you were looking at a Gantt chart, not a Gantt chart, but post-it pads is another way you can utilize this tool, Google Sheets, to create this. You could also do this with something that does mind mapping or flowcharts to get a visual representation. Miro is a strong tool for creating this. I like doing it in Smartsheet, and I'm going to share this template with you because what it does automatically, which ties back into utilizing this to create and drive budget control, schedule, and schedule control. Where site preparation, you can expand it, and you have land survey, clearing and grubbing, grading and excavation. And if you notice, this one has a WBS number, which is 3, and then these, which are children of the site preparation, all have a relationship. They have the same last name, I almost said, but first name here, 3 point, and then 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. If we were to decide that we're going to do land surveying in multiple areas, let's say we're doing area 1, and we are going to do it in areas up to area 7, you could enter those after inserting line and indent it. So area 1 becomes 3.1.1. So this number will be the WBS, the project code for this, that you can have associated costs, associated assignment, associated schedule. So the WBS numbers and the WBS, once created, is locked, so that this number is always representing this scope. So foundation 4.1, if you look at project management, track progress against schedule and budget is always 1.2.1. And this, the template that I will share with you, automatically calculates a WBS. So if you were to insert something new, like something comes in here and we want to call this control for programming, right? As opposed to control implementation. I wanted to break this down further. You got these two, make them children, and then control programming become 10.3.1, mean it's the parent is 10, project management. It's under control, which is 10.3, and it's 10.3.1, and there's 10.3.2, right? So the ability to do that is a powerful part of what this tool affords us. All right, so a couple of examples there. In construction, we're talking about foundation, framing, roofing. Those are some of the deliverables. If you're doing application development, you can talk about front end, back end, testing, implementation, deployment. There's a whole host. If you're doing book publishing, you're writing, you're editing, you're designing, that whole process. Video production, pre-production, filming, editing. These are examples of WBS. And I wanted to look a little bit on WBS tools and templates. And let me just come back to this one here and show you and speak about a concept that I want us to all understand here so we can become smarter managers. We want to ensure that we are benefiting from our experiences, and we can treat our experiences as things that are mental, and we hope to remember the details and apply the details in the future. And that will have its strengths and its limitations. It will never be 100%. A stronger approach is a systematic way of capturing lessons learned and incorporating them into your next plan. And here is why I suggest that everybody who is serious about being a project manager, and if you're working in multiple industries, you're going to do one per industry. So if you're doing IT projects and construction projects, you probably won't use the same one, but you want to create a WBS template for your typical project. And what that means is you have this list, and when you go to plan the WBS for a project, you're looking at the project and the specific goals and looking at your template and seeing what applies and what doesn't. You throw it out, right? But you keep your template. And in doing that project, when you learn of things, let's say you learn that we have to look at the impact of working with in a union state or somewhere there where there's prevailing wages concerns, and you add those concepts as concepts under your human relations management, under project management, it should make its way to your template. So when you show up for your next project, you're not depending on your recollection of mistakes and successes, but you're depending on a system that has this template that you have fed from way back when, and you continue to feed, and that continues to grow with you as an experienced project manager. And it then informs your next project. It makes, when you walk into a project and you do a WBS and do an analysis, you're bringing to the floor detail from previous experiences, and you have a level of confidence that you have done a thorough pass through. And if you augment that with listening to your team and adding information based on your team to inform and create the WBS for this project, while as a part of your system extracting those to add to your template, then you just continue to become a smarter manager. I guarantee that, as opposed to the one who is doing it from recollection, and you're doing this project and you're so focused on the things that didn't go right on your immediate past project, and you make sure those are done 100%. And that can lead to you even forgetting what was done right and what it took for those things to go right. And then you make a new set of mistakes on this, and next project you fix those, and then you forget. So you have mistakes alternating generations. as opposed to the concept of two concepts I'm mixing here, and I've spoken about one before, the concept of a checklist, and I'm mixing the concept of a checklist with the concept of a work breakdown structure to say to everybody who is consuming this content that you should have a WBS template that you use as a starting point, use as a reference. And I'll just wrap up with this concept. If, for instance, you're doing a project that has research and development where you're going to have to produce first articles, mock-ups, or testing for proof of concept, then that's there, and that's a part of your sort of template. If you walk into a project where you're just rinsing and repeating and pulling things together and there's no research and development, then in going through that checklist and modifying it to create one for this current project, those will just immediately get an NA, but they are not struck off your template list. And your template list will continue to grow with your project experience and make you not just a project manager who's been managing for 10 years, but a project manager with an active bank of knowledge, templates, data that impacts the next project and every single project that you are doing. That's one sure way to do it. All right? So sharpen your tools, make sure you understand the tools. I speak a lot about the fighter pilot who is put to drive a Formula One race car, and the Formula One race car driver who is put in front of in the cockpit of a fighter pilot, a fighter aircraft, fighter jet, and both are great at their craft, but put in the wrong tool. The tool is different, and the tool is capable of many things. But if the operator of the tool is incapable of interacting with the tool to make it do what you want it to do, then you're going to have a problem. Which is why I say, regardless of the tool you're using, you are better served being a master of a tool with less capabilities than being a novice at a tool that has all the potential bells and whistles, right? So numbering outline, just creating a hierarchy or using some type of flowchart, Microsoft projects, Trello, Miro, all of those can be utilized here. Just showed you real quick how Smartsheet can help with that. All right, so there's some common mistakes before you wrap up here. Some common mistakes that you can look out for and try to avoid in creating WBS is to make sure you are focusing on the what and not the how. You want it to be more deliverables based than necessarily activities. You want to get to the proper level of detail, and you may say, Rohan, so how do I know? You almost have to just sort of feel this out with your team, and you will know when you're getting into some of the minutiae that will be managed in scheduling and process and execution management as opposed to planning. All right? You don't want to ignore your team's input. This is going to lead to scope gap. This is going to lead to you ignoring their experience, and their experiences are many and will always be a lot wider than yours only. It should augment. It shouldn't be seen as, oh, I don't necessarily need that. I'm sort of suggesting this. You want to bring that in. Never forget the 100% rule. It saves us from missing critical element. You want to include every physical thing that is involved in this. If you're creating something that is physical, a concept that I learned from a PM I worked with is to view that physical thing in your mind from different angles. And that helps you to make sure you're not missing any obvious thing. We are creating a layout for a building or a layout for an attraction or something tangible. If you draft it, if you picture it, if you approach it from a different direction, so instead of walking to the venue from where the guests will enter to go to where the guests will consume and where they will leave, picture it in your mind in the reverse direction. Picture it from a different point of view. It's going to help you to comb through and make sure you are including 100%. Right? It is some effort. It's absolutely worth it because the cost to make corrections, the cost to make additions is way less when you're doing it in the planning stages than when you are executing and then you realize, aha, we didn't think of this, we didn't think of that. All right. So the WBS is not just a document you create that sits there. It's converted into action. It helps to create work packages and assign clear owners and accountability. It is linked to your project elements, so it's budget, schedules, risk planning. Remember, we spoke about the WBS as a list, but the WBS should also have a WBS set of numbers so you can reference those numbers for brevity and clarity. Instead of describing or using the name, you want to have those. And you're using it to monitor progress. You're tracking completion using WBS codes. And obviously, as we said, tracking budgets and all that. All right, so the takeaway is to use WBS. Use it as a PM backbone. It's critical, it helps, it takes some effort. Create your WBS template, build and grow that, and reference that for every single project. Be sure to use, if you're brainstorming with a team and you're like, something comes up that isn't applicable to this project for whatever reason, be sure to transfer that to your template, even if it doesn't make the WBS for this particular goal because it doesn't apply. But use that experience, use that near miss, use that thought to drive your template to become a more robust document. So we're starting with a structure. You're maximizing and utilizing a tool that works for creating the mechanics of creating the WBS must be efficient. You want to become a master of that tool so you can do it quickly. So the next time you have a project to do and you have to do a WBS, you're not, the friction that you anticipate can oftentimes lead to procrastination. And it's a big and a common thing where you have this thing on your to-do and you just know that, oh my God, for me to do it, I'm going to have to struggle through this. I'm going to have to remember how to use this tool. You want to invest the time in mastering the tool so that the mental friction that you anticipate doesn't become a stumbling block in your mind before you even start that. All right. So again, we're going to do these sessions trying to just help to create some of these concepts, to put them in framework, to use some examples. So if you like what you heard here, please go ahead and hit the like button. Share this with someone who you think would benefit, and help us all so we all can become the smarter manager. Until the next video, I'm Rohan, and I appreciate you listening to the very end. Sorry, there's no prize here beyond the joy of completing this. So thank you for being here, and until next time, continue to become the smarter manager that we all can be.